is the ambient weather model WS8600 color changing alarm clock. Now, included with the clock here are the instructions, which I don't have on screen here, the wireless sensor, which I have inside here just to be able to show what it looks like, and an AC wall adapter, which I've got plugged in here, that has about 6 foot length cord here. Now, the wireless sensor has needs two AA batteries, which I have in here already, that are not included for the sensor. As you can see, the sensor itself has, it's a little hard to see there, but a 3-button selector for the channels and then a reset. Sorry about the a little hard to see. And one of my little small complaints with the sensor itself is that the little numbers that are on the channels there are a little hard to see because they're also white and just molded into the casing there, so it's a little hard to see. The clock itself also has a battery backup, which it's a little hard to see as well, but it's located on the bottom of the stand here. It's one of those coin-type CR2032 batteries. That is included with the clock. So, oops, and I accidentally changed the color here of the clock. But for me, I think this is one neat little clock because it combines the standard features of a bedroom alarm clock with some really cool weather station features. Now, the clock itself is pretty compact in size. It's about 5.5 inches wide, by about 4.5 inches tall. And with the way it's made, the stand is another a little over 2 inches wide, 2.25 inches wide. Although the primary display here is not even an inch thick. So, but it's compact in size, so it makes it a good clock for a good size clock for a bedroom clock. But even being compact, though, the primary portion of this clock is basically almost all display. So the display takes up most of those dimensions, maybe a 1/4 inch around here that's not taken up by the actual display. So, the large display here kind of makes it easy to view, and it's slightly angled back, which is a little hard to tell here, but slightly angled back, but prevents glare as well, making it easy to see and see the display without any glare. Now, the clock itself, it feels pretty solid and well made. It's actually a nice little clock, and again, put together pretty well. Now, with the initial setup for this, you have to open the bottom battery slot. There's a little plastic protector to keep the battery from running down, and pull that out. Now, one thing that's slightly odd, I would say, about this clock is when the battery backup inside this clock needs to be changed. There'll be a low battery indicator come on. But to get that indicator to go away, you not only have to change the battery, but you actually have to pull the power plug from the clock. Otherwise, that indicator will not go away even with the new battery. Now, the downside to that, of course, is that once you do that, you have to end up resetting all the clock features back on it. So I didn't like that little initial quirk with that. It's relatively minor because I think the CR2032 battery will last quite a long time before it needs to be changed. But it is a little bit of an annoyance. So now, once you have the battery backups activated inside the clock and the batteries inside the sensor, this actually syncs very quickly to the clock. Actually, probably in terms of, I have a lot of different brands of weather stations because I think they're kind of neat, but it actually activated and synced with the clock very quickly, within a few seconds, quicker than actually that I have ever seen with any of my previous weather stations. And I own a couple different brands. I have a couple of crosses and things like that, but it actually synced up quicker than any I've ever had before, which I kind of like. So I'm not sure if that's because this is like the latest generation of the sensors here with these types of stations, or they've improved that or not. But I hope that kind of trend continued with these different weather stations. So now with the initial sensors, initial setup with the sensor and the clock, there's, as you can see here, there's some slight variations between the temperature, although the temperature is the same right now, and the humidity. I did get some variation with that, with these being initially set up. It's never varied more than a half to 0.9 degrees between the tubes sitting side by side, and the humidity, as you can see, is 1 percentage point. I've seen 2, so there's some slight variations with that. And considering this isn't a professional level weather sensor, I kind of expect some variation, and it seems to be a fairly reasonable difference to me. And once I've placed this outside, I've had it outside, compared to the other stations I have, which again are not professional stations either, there is some slight variation, but within, the realm of what I would consider reasonable, within a degree and within a percentage point or 2 of humidity. Of course, that kind of varies with where you locate the sensor and that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. Again, if you're looking for a professional level type weather station, this is more of what I would consider consumer level weather station. So you're going to have some variation like that. Now, the sensor itself, as with all of these types of sensors, should be placed in an area outside of direct sunlight. And for me personally, I found works best protected under like a porch area. Now, the clock itself on the back has several buttons and several function buttons, which kind of make the setup a little bit easier to do, because you've got basically buttons that handle all the different features pretty quickly. You've got, the alarm setup, the channel select buttons, the display color select, which allow you here to actually manually select the display, which I'll show in a second, or even select a rotating color display, that kind of thing. So, and in addition, there's the sync button, like if you need to resync to the sensor, barometric pressure, outdoor temperature selector, which allows you to basically sync the display color with whatever the temperature is outside, kind of match up to match for the very different colors. A reset button here, the Fahrenheit Celsius selector, and a display selector, which allows you to select the brightness levels. And let me demonstrate that. So you can dim and even actually basically turn it off, which is kind of a nice feature. Then on top, of course, is the alarm/snooze button here, which is a fairly decent size for the type of clock it is, and works well. Now, setup for the clock and the alarm is pretty easy to do. You just press the corresponding buttons, hold them down, and they flash, and you use the up-down buttons to set those up. Now, the alarm itself has a little display once you turn it on. It can be turned on or off by the alarm button on the back. And you get, of course, 10 minutes, which seems to be standard for alarm clocks, of snooze. And the alarm is loud enough and has some variation in how it alarms to get you awake. But the one thing that I'm not too sure about with this alarm, with the alarm and the snooze feature, is that if you hold this snooze button, let's say you're asleep and you hit it to give yourself 10 minutes of snooze, but you leave your hand on it for more than a couple seconds, it actually turns the alarm off. I would have much preferred like a separate off button here off to the side or something, as opposed to that, because I could just see me hitting that and not taking my hand off, and the next thing I know, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So, again, I would have kind of preferred that to be a separate button. The clock display is capable of military standard time. I've got it on standard. As you can see the display here, it's pretty easy to read. It's got a nice large time display and weather display here. Along with the, in addition to the temperature and humidity, there's a barometric display here, along with a little graph. And everything for the most part is pretty easy to read. The only thing I think that's a little crowded is the graph here. But since that's something I only occasionally look at and reference anyway, it's not a big deal. I just think that's a little small and crowded for the display. Now, the instructions recommend calibrating the barometric sensor, which basically you just look up your local weather station, to see what the pressure is, and you can just adjust that to the relative pressure to what the current relative pressure is. It makes it a little bit more accurate in terms of what the its barometric pressure indicator is doing. Now, the one thing I like about this is I like the color change feature, and again, there's different things you can do. I have it currently set to match the temperature, and it's yellow right now because, of course, I have the sensor sitting beside it, and that's the color indicating at that temperature level. But the one thing I like about it is not only you can match it to change with the temperature outside, you can also manually do it to different colors that allow you to change the different colors. There's several different variations here, and you actually can change the intensity level of each of those colors. But I like that and feature. I think it's a kind of a neat feature, especially with the temperature change feature that it has. Now, overall, I think this is a pretty nice little clock. It's well made. It's nice looking. It's a good sized clock for bedside use. It has nice weather features considering it's an alarm clock. It has a nice large display. It's easy to read the time and weather information, and for the most part, it's pretty easy to set up everything. Again, I really like the temperature change feature. I think that's kind of neat. The sensor itself syncs pretty quickly. It has the battery backup feature, which is good. A long power cable, and according to the manufacturer's website, it has a 1-year warranty, which it doesn't say any instructions. I looked that up from the manufacturer's website itself. And again, you could change to the color display or even turn the display off, which is kind of cool. And for the most part, the temperature and humidity seems to be fairly accurate. Although, some of the cons with that is there is some slight variation because it is a consumer level station as opposed to a professional one. And other than the fact that the low battery indicator is kind of a little bit of an annoyance, and the snooze button can be accidentally turned off if you hold the button down too long. That's, to me, is a slight annoyance. But overall, I really think this is a neat little clock. It's well made, it's solid, and I give it 4.5 stars. This is the Ambient Weather model WS8600 color changing alarm clock. Now, included with the clock here are the instructions, which I don't have on screen here, the wireless sensor, which I have inside here just to be able to show what it looks like, and an AC wall adapter, which I've got plugged in here, that has about 6-foot length cord here. Now, the wireless sensor has needs two AA batteries, which I have in here already, that are not included for the sensor. As you can see, the sensor itself has, it's a little hard to see there, but a 3-button selector for the channels and then a reset. Sorry about a little hard to see. And one of my little small complaints with the sensor itself is that the little numbers that are on the channels there are a little hard to see because they're also white and just molded into the casing there, so it's a little hard to see. The clock itself also has a battery backup, which is a little